My name is Scott Hubble, the proud owner of Metro Maples, and a very unique nursery that specializes in a number of different types of maples that grow well in our North Texas climate. The nursery has been here for a number of years. It was originally started in the mid-90s by a man named Keith Johansson, who had a vision originally to be a wholesale nursery that supplied smaller nurseries in the DFW area. It wasn't too long after he started Metro Maples that the Fort Worth newspaper wrote an article about the place, and that got word out to the public, and it's been more or less open to the public ever since. So a really unique place, very specific in our focus. The maples, there's such a vast arrangement, a palette of these trees that work in various locations, multiple textures, colors, those sorts of things. So they're really interesting trees and a lot of fun to grow here. I started as a customer years ago, probably 15, 16 years ago, and I would come out every Saturday to pick 2 or 3 of these little ones that we're standing among right here. And it wasn't long after that Keith, the man that started the nursery, asked me if I wanted a job. So I worked for Keith for 10 years, and in January of 2016 he retired and sold Metro Maples to me. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do this as a profession, because I would be doing it as a hobby at home if I had a different job. So I feel really lucky and love coming to work every day. Yeah. The main attraction with Japanese maples would be spring and fall color, and the Acer truncatum as well. The Shantung maple, which is a Chinese native, they're beautiful in the fall, and that's what gets people's interest up, gets their attention, that sort of thing. Even though our state is as large as it is, a number of maples will grow in numerous locations of Texas. The things that you'll notice the further south you go would be the lack of fall color. The warmer the wintertime weather is, the less likely the trees are to perform nicely in the fall. But we can have really pretty color all the way down to Austin, and there are numerous maples that will work further south than that. They just wouldn't give you as showy a fall display. They're well suited to an understory environment, an area that has large existing trees to provide them shade through especially the afternoon. So Japanese maples are more ornamental with their size and growth habit. Work very well underneath the canopy, also on a protected side of the home, say the east side of the property would work very well. With the Japanese maples, it's very important to protect them from as much afternoon sun as possible. So they work very well under canopy. The Shantung maples, which are Chinese natives, a very easy to grow tree in our climate, they're well suited to a full sun location. So the Shantung maples could be right out in a fully exposed part of the landscape, and would be really happy in that type of an area, and would also provide really pretty colors every year in late November. Just the unique look of a lot of these trees, the colors are always probably the most attractive part, but the feel and just the feeling that they leave the viewer with is really really significant. When you see a beautiful, especially an old Japanese maple, it's hard to look away when they're in their best spring or fall color. So I think what people find out here is they come out with an expectation that they're going to find maybe a small assortment of Japanese maples, and a lot of people get hooked. It's easy to become a collector of these trees because they do have such variation within the species, and we have them in small pots all the way to big ones, so it makes it easy for someone with any budget to start a maple collection. In terms of cold weather, it would be very difficult for us to ever have temperatures cold enough to damage them, even in containers. The summer weather can be hard on them if they're in a spot that's borderline as far as the sun exposure is concerned. But overall, they're easy trees to grow. When people struggle with them, it tends to be related to either the amount of sun that they're in or the trees receiving too much water. But they're easy to grow and provide a lot of enjoyment really at all times of the year. The Japanese maples are, in the nursery trade, they're typically propagated through grafting. And that's the most efficient and effective way to replicate a specific variety. Japanese maples will produce seed, but that seed very rarely holds the characteristic of the parent plant. So 9 out of 10 seedlings that you would germinate would be the standard green Acer palmatum, like what you would see at the Fort Worth Japanese garden, which is a wonderful tree, but all of the unique varieties, it's very unusual that they'll pass their genetics on to the seed that they produce. So grafting is the best way to get those characteristics passed on, and it's a tedious process, but it keeps all of the named cultivars true to form. In other words, you're not muddying the water, with something that might be similar, and it also strengthens weaker cultivars. So lace leaf varieties, some of the dwarf Japanese maple varieties are much stronger when they're grafted onto the standard Acer palmatum rootstock, and so it allows unique varieties that otherwise may not be able to be grown successfully. It allows those to be grown with relative ease. The most popular Japanese maples are still the what we would call the upright reds. So Bloodgood is the most common and an excellent tree. Red Emperor and Fireglow would be two of the slightly newer introductions that are very similar to Bloodgood, but have certain characteristics, small details that set them apart as being a little bit better option for a Japanese maple. Those are fantastic trees. Orangeola is a lace leaf variety that has been one of our probably top 5 most popular trees over the years, and but I'll tell you, it's hard to find a bad one. It really seems to, all of them have a unique feature that's fun to watch. The two most critical factors in the health and strength of Japanese maples would be the location as it relates to the sun exposure through the summertime, and also the drainage in the area. So the ideal space for a Japanese maple would be one that has AM sun, but then say from noon or 1 p.m. would be shaded, or at least under dappled light, some sort of protection from the intense direct afternoon sun. The soil in the area that the tree is going to be planted is very important too. Japanese maples have a very shallow and radial root system that's unusually fibrous and shallow. It's the majority of the large trees in the ground out here, if you were to dig them up, you would find the bulk of the root system would be within the first 18 inches of the soil line. So they have a very easy time finding good soil close to the surface, and another reason for their shallow root system is that tends to be the area that would hold the least amount of moisture. And with Japanese maples, drainage is critical. So with these trees, elevating them, planting them on a slight mound is very helpful. That way in rainy periods, especially the winter time, if we go through periods where we have prolonged rain, they'll be able to shed water as opposed to ever sitting in it, and that's very helpful to them. Waterlogged soil will always set back or in some cases kill outright a Japanese maple. So they're easy to grow if those two things, those two critical details are accounted for. And even in the clay soils, just having them high, mounded up, built up is the way to be successful with these trees. The Japanese maples, they also make great container plants. That's something that a lot of people express interest in, that come out here, growing them in pots, as decorative ornamental trees, say on their patio, something like that. They're easy to maintain in pots. You can see all the little ones out here, and growing them in containers is never an issue with the cold weather either. They're capable of freezing solid and not having any root compromise if the temperature is above 15 degrees. So it's real rare that the temperatures ever get cold enough to potentially affect the Japanese maples. Mm-hmm. The other types of maples that would be the most popular out here are the Acer truncatum or Shantung maples. And Keith did in the late 90s and early 2000s a lot of seed germinating of the Acer truncatum, and found a number of unique seedlings out of thousands and thousands of seeds that he grew. One of which is called Fire Dragon, the other Baby Dragon, and those are two named cultivars that Keith introduced that are unique to our nursery. They do exceptionally well in this part of Texas. They're fully capable of growing in the extreme hot sun, and about the only requirement that they would have would be like the Japanese maples, to be planted in a way that they're able to shed water. But each of those are magnificent trees, provide great fall color, and do remarkably well in the hot Texas sun. Here we have two unique maples to metro maples, both being Shantung. Just inside of the wooden fenced-in garden is the original Fire Dragon Shantung maple. That's a tree that would mature to 25 to 30 feet tall and wide, do exceptionally well in a sunny location, and also provide a really pretty red to red-orange fall color. That's been a really popular tree over the last 8 or 10 years, with smaller lot sizes, that sort of thing. The Fire Dragon makes a great shade tree for a smaller space. And another really neat, more ornamental size Shantung maple is called Baby Dragon. That's what this is right here. And this is a taller example than you would normally find if one were just allowed to grow on its own. Keith and I grew this Baby Dragon on a bamboo standard for a number of years to get it taller quicker. And that took it a little bit out of its growth habit. We got it taller than it would be otherwise. But Baby Dragon is an ornamental size, so you could expect it to be 8 to 10 feet tall and wide at maturity, and also performs very well in a full sun location. It turns more of a yellow with spots of orange in the fall, but is a really good, strong growing small maple that could be planted in a really hot, sunny spot in our climate, and you could expect it to do very well. Both of those trees are are unique to metro maples, and we've had a lot of good feedback over the years with customers who have tried them. Mm-hmm. In the greenhouse here, this is where all of the propagation happens, and right now we've got close to 5,000 trees that I'll say 40-50% have been grafted at this point, and within the next 2 to 3 weeks I'll finish the remainder. But in my hand here we've got a cultivar called Tamahime. Tamahime is always one of the earliest Japanese maples to grow, so it is one of the first that I graft each year. So this tree was grafted on January 4th, and you can see after that length of time the swelling of these buds on what we would call the scion, or this smaller stick right here. So this graft is more than likely going to take, and you can see a little bit of the detail right here behind my finger is the union. So what happens is this thicker piece, we'd call it the rootstock or the understock, and when we start, that rootstock is 3-4 feet tall, somewhere around there, just like these over behind me. I'll cut those down just before grafting. That way all of the resources are kept with the tree for as long as possible. And I'll shorten them and then collect whatever scion material we're wanting to propagate. And those scions, these little sticks, they would get cut to a point, a real sharp point right at the very end that actually goes down here into the rootstock. So that point would be approximately 1/4 of an inch long, and we would make a flap in the rootstock that corresponds lengthwise to that pointed cut. So you'd have a pointed cut fitting right into a flap of this rootstock, and then there's a paraffin tape that you can see a little bit of how I'm moving it with my finger. That is very stretchy, and it clings to itself. So once the graft is assembled, I'll put that tape around it, and then the yellow right here is a sealer that just keeps out any air or moisture. And each of the tape and the sealer will expand as the tree thickens, and with time, as it's exposed to more UV light, each of those will deteriorate and actually drop off. So after about the first year, the tape and the sealer will fall off, and the tree will be left to grow. Now this is what they would all start looking like. Just and this is a standard Acer palmatum, the species green bark, green leaf, and these are much more vigorous, stronger growing than just about any named cultivar. So they're all attached to this rootstock to strengthen the variety that we're wanting. I have specific stock plants or parent plants that I cut on each year to graft from, and so yeah, that's normally an early in the morning job with my headlamp, and I get the day's wood cut and refrigerate it, and then as I go through them, I get the bags of them out of the fridge. But it's a lot of fun. It's neat to look at them and think that this might give somebody some pleasure years down the road, enjoying this tree. There are certain varieties that would have a real consistent piece of wood, and when I'm doing something like that, like coral barks or some of the uprights have nice internode spacing, I could do one flat, which has 36 trees. I could do one flat in maybe 35 or 40 minutes. Other varieties are much slower. If they're lace leaf varieties, they tend to have curves even in short sticks, and a curve makes it very difficult to make that first cut, the cut that ends at a point. But I'd say on average probably one flat every hour would be good. When they're potted, sometime in May or June, this little stub right here, that will actually be removed So there'll be kind of an angled cut like that, and from that point, where that stub was cut, that'll heal within the first year, and then the tree will be allowed to grow at whatever pace it would like, and it'll, from that point on, be, in this case, Tamahime, or whatever named cultivar you attached. These will get potted from 1 gallon containers into from these liner pots into 1 or 2 gallon containers in sometime in May, and then they'll be sold that coming fall. They'll root out very quickly, and it doesn't take long at all for the graft union itself to be fortified to the point that you can be very confident that it won't fail. And it's just a matter of allowing some root to develop, and the smaller trees will start being sold in the fall of this coming year. Question about container grown versus balled and burlapped is an excellent question, and in my opinion, a container grown tree would always have an advantage in terms of its ability to establish in a new location a little bit faster. The trade-off that you'll normally have between a container grown tree and a balled and burlap tree would be size. The B&Bs, you'll be able to find a larger size tree if it's balled and burlapped in most cases. The container grown trees, the pot sizes can go up very large to 300 gallon or bigger, but in most cases, trees that are in that large a container have at some point been field grown, removed from the field, and then put in that large container to establish roots. What you get with the container grown tree is just a finer root system with more functioning roots. All of the balled and burlap trees have recently been dug from a field, so some percentage of their root system has been removed as a result of that. But the different growers will irrigate in ways that directly influence the roots in a balled and burlapped root system. A lot of the growers in Oregon don't irrigate at all, and when that happens, you get a very expansive root system that when it's cut to fit into a ball, you lose 80% or more. The grower that we use drip irrigates each of the balled and burlapped trees, so you get a more compact root system that has a lot better chance of success with the transplant into the new location. But there always would be just a little bit more of a wait for a balled and burlap tree to show vigor and become as vigorous as the container grown tree. And another thing too, the container grown trees are much lighter. Even though that looks fairly innocent, the ginkgo right here, that probably weighs 300 pounds, so they are unbelievably heavy. But there are a lot of folks that are willing to trade off all of those things to have a bigger tree to start with. I hope this has been in some way informative. We're open Monday through Saturday, and would be happy to have you out. We're always interested in talking maples, and hopefully you'll come out and see us and start your new collection. Yeah.